Hello students, I am teacher Svetlana and in our today's lecture, we will learn about the mechanism of respiration, that is breathing and external respiration, which is covered in the chapter Respiration and Circulation. So let's begin. Breathing. Now students, let us understand what is this process of breathing. It is a physical process by which gaseous exchange takes place between the atmosphere and the lungs. It involves inspiration and expiration. Both these steps involve parts of the thoracic cage, the ribs, the sternum and the intercostal muscles and the muscles of the diaphragm. Have a look at this image here. This is your thoracic cage here. These are your ribs. This is the sternum here. And we have these intercostal muscles and this is your diaphragm. So let us see what is this process of inspiration. Now during inspiration, the atmospheric air is taken into the lungs. It occurs due to the presence of gradient formed between the lungs and the atmosphere. It is an active process in which the diaphragm becomes flattened and goes downwards. The external intercostal muscles contract so that the ribs and the sternum move upwards and outwards. Have a look at this image here. You can see that in this process, the diaphragm is beginning to contract and it starts becoming flattened. We have your external intercostal muscles that are contracting so that these ribs and the sternum moves upwards and in the outwards direction. Now, because of this, it leads to an increase in the thoracic volume and decrease in the pressure of the thorax and the lungs. To equalize the low pressure inside the lungs, air from the atmosphere rushes into the lungs. This is inspiration. Have a look at this image here. You can see that the rib cage moves upward and forward. The area, that is the space inside your thoracic cage, the volume increases. And we have the pressure in the lung decreases and air comes rushing in. So the pressure is reduced and air comes within the lungs. So this process is inspiration. Now students, let us have a look at expiration. Now this is just an opposite phenomenon of inspiration. Now during expiration, the thoracic contracts causing air to be exhaled. The diaphragm relaxes and it pushes upwards. So here the diaphragm which had contracted is now relaxing and it is getting pushed upwards and it becomes a dome-shaped structure. So the intercostal muscles also relax, pulling the rib cage inwards and downwards. Now this causes a decrease in the thoracic volume and it leads to an increase in the pressure in the thorax and the lungs as compared to the atmospheric pressure. So the air from the lungs have to rush out and this is called as expiration. So you can see here the rib cage moves downwards and inwards. So the thoracic volume is now decreasing and the air now is forced out, which is expired through the breathing out of the air. So this process is your expiration, and one inspiration and one expiration is one breath. Now students, let us have a look at the external respiration, that is exchange of gases at the alveolar level. An alveolus consists of a layer of simple squamous epithelium resting on a basement membrane. Have a look at this figure here. This is your simple squamous epithelium resting on the basement membrane. Then it is intimately associated with a dense network of capillaries. So here you have an intimate association with the network of capillaries. The capillary wall is also made up of simple squamous epithelium resting on a thin basement membrane. So here you have your capillary wall which is also made up of squamous epithelium. Now both the layers have similar structure and they are thin walled. So these both layers have similar structure and they are thin walled. Together they make up the respiratory membrane through which gases exchange occurs, that in between the alveoli, air and the blood. So you can see together they are forming a respiratory membrane for exchange of gases. Diffusion of gases will take place from an area of high partial pressure to an area of low partial pressure. until the partial pressures in the two regions reaches equilibrium. Now students, let us see how much is this differences in the partial pressure that occurs due to which exchange of gases takes place. The partial pressure of carbon dioxide of the blood entering the pulmonary capillary is 45 mmHg, while the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the alveolar air is 40 mmHg. Now due to these differences, carbon dioxide diffuses from the capillaries into the alveolus. Similarly, partial pressure of oxygen of the blood in the pulmonary capillary is 40 mmHg, while in alveoli blood it is 104 mmHg. So here you can see the partial pressures that are created. Now, due to this difference, oxygen diffuses from the alveoli to the capillary. So, because of this difference from here, the alveoli, the oxygen diffuses into the capillaries. And here you have your carbon dioxide, which diffuses from the capillaries into the alveoli. So, this is how the exchange of gases takes place. Now students, let us know about certain pulmonary volumes and capacities. That is, what are the normal volumes. Let us see first what is the lung volumes. First we have the tidal volume, which is also denoted as TV. It is the volume of air inspired or expired during your normal breathing, and it is around 500 ml. Then let's look at the inspiratory reserve volume, IRV, the maximum volume of air or the extra volume of air that is inspired during forced breathing in addition to your tidal volume. So when you're forcefully breathing, the extra amount of air that you take in is called as the inspiratory reserve volume. Its value is 2000 to 3000 ml. Then we'll look at expiratory reserve volume, ERV, the maximum volume of air that is expired during forced breathing after normal expiration. So when you are forcefully expiring out air after you have normally expired out air, that volume is called as expiratory reserve volume. Its value is 1000 to 1100 ml. Then let us look at something called as dead space, DS, the volume of air that is present in the respiratory tract, that is from the nose to the terminal bronchioles, but not involved in gaseous exchange. So it is the air that remains in your respiratory tract, and it is around 150 ml. Then we have residual volume, RV, the volume of air that remains in the lungs and the dead space even after maximum expiration. So that is after you have expired all the air that you feel to the maximum capacity. After that also there is some amount of air that remains in the lungs and the dead space. So it is around 1100 to 1200 ml, and it is called as the residual volume. Now let us have a look at the lung capacities. Total lung capacity, the maximum amount of air that the lungs can hold after maximum forceful inspiration. So when you are taking in air, breathing in air to the maximum capacity, the volume or the capacity of air that the lung can hold at that time is called as the total lung capacity, which is around 5200 to 5800 ml. Then we have something called as vital capacity, which is VC, the maximum amount of air that can be breathed out after maximum inspiration. So how much maximum can you breathe out after maximum inspiration is called as the vital capacity. So it is normally the sum total of your tidal volume, your inspiratory reserved volume, your expiratory reserved volume, and it is around 4100 to 4600 ml. So these are the different volumes and capacities of your lungs. Now why do we need to know these? Because it gives you these values give you the normal functioning of your respiratory system. So if there is any problem in this volume, it might indicate some problem with the functioning of your lungs or some problem associated with your respiratory tract. Thank you students for participating in this lecture. See you soon again with the next topic. Till then, take care, be safe and keep learning.